Story. Once upon a time, in a beautiful city of Jos Plateau State, one of the most blessed parts of Nigeria when it comes to weather and food. Typical mornings begin with the familiar sound of tricycles rattling down narrow streets. Keke napep they are called. The three-wheeled machines that carry both dreams and despair. Their drivers, wrapped in dust and determination, fill the city with motion. Some ferry students to school, others transport bags of tomatoes, or weary market women clutching their earnings. For most of them, every day is a gamble between hunger and survival, between faith and fear. Amidst these ordinary lives, in one of Jos's quiet suburbs, something dark was growing. The authorities would later say that if not for a routine inspection, a brutal secret might never have been uncovered. A young man, married and seemingly harmless, became infamous for the choices he made, which would later affect multiple families. His name was Samson Eze, a 31-year-old father who underneath that harmless image had a chilling truth. He had found a new business that no one could imagine. No details of the early life of Samson is available publicly, but he was seen to be an average young man, probably raised in a modest home, taught to be resilient and industrious in order to withstand the harsh realities of not being wealthy in Nigeria's economy. However, Samson, who was said to be 31 years old, was a husband and a father to two young kids. He lived around the Kampala Agege area. He was struggling to make ends meet. He was broke, and like anyone in his shoes, he tried starting up a business, but business after business, Samson would end up failing several times. Things got even more difficult for him that he had to find a way out. This was when he devised a devilish plan, one that would have him finally taking care of his family and immediate needs. You see, the average man in the city of Jos either runs a little business in stalls or shops, whilst others stick to transportation businesses, one of which is the keke tricycle that ferries people from one point to another. An average keke rider carries hope in each fare that today will bring enough money for school fees, for food, for maybe repairing the keke if the engine had gotten bad, and other times for paying rent when it is due. The dangers of this business he knows. The roads are usually unlit with lights. Strangers who perhaps want him to drive them to secluded areas. Rains that can trap the keke in mud pits, so he carries a flashlight, a hammer, a spare bolt, and extra fuel. These were the kind of people Samson targeted, knowing that only one of these vehicles could change his predicament. In December of 2021, with a well-plotted scheme on how to operate this newfound way of making money, he would lure an unsuspecting tricyclist by pretending that he wanted to charter the man to his house to carry some things. But unfortunately, when they get to the house, an uncompleted building in a seemingly remote area, he would direct the guy to walk in front of him and then attack the rider from behind using a machete or an axe. In order to conceal his crime of unaliving the keke rider, Samson would dump the body of his victim in a septic tank in the said building. He would go ahead to artificially fill the septic tank with water and then also use some form of chemical to conceal the smell that will come from the decaying body. After which he would take possession of the vehicle. Now finally things were going well, and after successfully committing this crime, Samson would come home with enough money and a keke, and his family was becoming happier. At a point, Samson was bawling that he had parked about 3 tricycles at his home, which raised suspicion, especially with his wife. His wife, who knew that he had nothing to do prior to that time, would question how he had gotten the tricycle, and he claimed that he rented it. But even at that, she hadn't seen someone renting 3 keke at the same time. Another person who was concerned about his acquisition of 3 tricycles was his brother, to which he gave the same answer. He wanted to also sell and even rent out others so that he could relax. For Samson, he wanted to be a boss and more. But Samson's newfound business would be halted when the unexpected happened. You see, at some point, Samson was used to a certain routine. Get a rider, tell them it's a charter, because they would carry him to go get some stuff and transport it to another location. After bargaining and agreeing on a price, they would set out, and when they get to the venue, he would ask that the rider follow him into the uncompleted building. to carry the stuff, and when they were inside, he would attack the rider. However, things didn't go as planned this time. The last victim put up a fight before he was put down in one of the rooms of the uncompleted building where Samson had lured him to. This led to blood being spilled on the walls and the floor, of which Samson didn't clean nor try to conceal. But this said uncompleted building where Samson was killing people was owned by his brother. And in one of his routine inspections of his property, Samson's brother would spot the stains. You see, after over 1 year of smooth business, family doing well, and having 3 keke vehicles running and working for him, Samson's brother had noticed the blood spillage inside the building and had questioned Samson, of which he got no straight answer. Sometime in January 2022, the same day Samson had his ordeal with his last victim, Samson's brother, after leaving his uncompleted building, would spot Samson sitting in a tricycle and heading to the building. He thought it to be fishy as they had no prior agreement for Samson to be at the premises, but it was too late for him to go back, and he probably had other things to do. So the next day, Samson's brother would go to inspect the house and notice dried blood stains. This time, it had trails down to the septic tank where he discovered over 3 bodies floating in it. That same day, on the 22nd of January 2022, Samson's elder brother would get the police involved and had Samson arrested on suspicion of homicide. After denying it, Samson would later confess to the murders, describing every gory detail and negating his careful calculations. In his defense, he claimed that the cause of his actions was that he needed money to help himself and his family, and that this made him resort to being a serial killer. He also added that he wanted to travel abroad just to find greener pastures. But for the families of the dead, no confession could bring peace. They had lost sons, brothers, and fathers, men who left home one morning to earn a living and never returned. When Samson was paraded by the police before the press, his face was blank and emotionless. He looked like any ordinary man, which made it all the more terrifying. In Jos, the story of Samson spread like wildfire. People whispered about it in markets and bus stops, in churches and beer parlors. How could a man kill so easily? How could a husband, a father, turn predator against men just like him? For many, the story became a warning that desperation can twist even the simplest heart, and poverty, when mixed with envy, can create monsters. Samson's wife reportedly left the city soon after his arrest. His brother, the man whose property became a graveyard, was never the same again. He had unknowingly built a house of horror. The victims' tricycles were recovered. Their families were invited to identify the remains of their loved ones, and the city mourned. And in the quiet evenings of Jos, when the hum of tricycles filled the streets, some riders still remember. They say prayers before taking late-night fares. They glance over their shoulders on lonely roads, because somewhere in their minds, they know, once upon a time, one of their own turned killer.